Welcome to the Sober on Purpose podcast, where we talk about more than just substance abuse disorder. We talk about all levels of addiction. One that I have been running into, particularly in my practice at the moment, is dealing with pornography addiction. And it's not a respecter of socioeconomic, of race, color, gender, whatever. It doesn't matter. It is still open and out there, and it's not talked about very much. So I have the great pleasure of introducing JK Emezi, like amazing, who does the Porn Reboot program. At this point, they have a deep waiting list. So we're going to put all his links below. He would like to hear from y'all, but know that if this is something you need to get on his waiting list now so that you can get the help that you need. I have just really enjoyed talking to him about the different things that he is doing in this program. Just to let you know a little bit about his background, he is a certified addiction coach. He focuses on sex and pornography areas of addiction. He comes from a sales background and a recruiting background, which we know entrepreneurs are folks with addictions are great entrepreneurs. They turn that around and man, they are after it. They're hard working, they're problem solving. And so when he developed this program, he he was not looking at what other people were doing. He was creating something very different. So JK, can you tell us how this came about and how you started serving people?
Fantastic. Tanya, thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure to be here and to share with you and your audience. Um, I unfortunately got into this when I was very young. I was 8 years old when I was first exposed to pornography. And some of you, perhaps your partners and your loved ones, as you get to know them, if you know someone who's struggling with it, you might find a similar theme. Without going too much into the details, I was a latchkey kid,
Mm.
and my parents would pick the key up, and we had all these rules who we should and shouldn't allow into the home. Well, we had a nanny who would take care of us for a few hours and leave, and I loved comic books. I still love comic books actually, and she was reading a comic book one day, and I was determined to read it. I was a voracious reader, but she wouldn't show it to me. And so, like
Ah.
most kids do, I ransacked that house one day when she left and I found it. It was a pornographic comic book.
Mm.
And being 8 years old and seeing something like that, I knew two things. So, I grew up in a Christian household, we were Catholic.
Mhm.
And I knew number one, that it was naughty, I would get into trouble.
Mhm.
And I also knew that it involved sex. But
Mhm.
because I didn't know enough about sex, and this was in illustrated form, obviously with a lot of things exaggerated, um, it was shocking to me. And what
Mm.
happened in that moment was that there was a change in my nervous system. I wasn't aroused, but there was adrenaline, it was taboo. But here's the interesting that thing that happened, and I only realized this in retrospect. Every time that I experience rejection, anger, a strong emotion, punishment from my parents, and I wanted to change my state, I started going to nudity. Nudity would change my state, and I continued doing that until I hit puberty and discovered masturbation and orgasm. And then it was off to the races. My
Mm.
entire teenage years through my early 20s, going through the things teenagers go through, heartbreak and thinking you're ugly because your arms are longer than your shoulders, your legs, and you got boys. So you know what it's like. It's just a weird time. Going
Yes.
through that weird time. Unfortunately, pornography was always there. And what I didn't realize was that throughout those teenage years and also growing up in a Christian household, I had to hide. I
Mm.
had to deal with the fear of eternal damnation and the realization of sin. And
Mhm.
constantly doing that built up these habits of secrecy and isolation and hiding. I think this
Mhm.
is very important to note because if you have a loved one in your life who's struggling with this, it's important to realize that this did not start when they met you. These
Mm.
behaviors usually started a long time. They are deeply ingrained, and it takes a while for them to start understanding where it came from and how to deal with it. But this brings us to when I was about 20 years old, and that was about the depth of my addiction. That was the height of my addictive behavior.
Can we go back just a little bit? Because I really liked how you phrased it, and I would call it you were mood altering. You said when you got rejection, anger, strong feelings. What led you to really understand that this was something that you didn't want to participate anymore? Because it was working for you.
Absolutely. That's such a good question. It was working for me. And the sad part is that it took a while for me to put two and two together. See, pornography, by the time I was 20 years old, I'm 39 right now. By the time I was 20 years old, MTV and a lot of the music channels and things were becoming a little bit more lewd. They're out of control now on social
Right.
media. And
Absolutely.
so a lot of these things seemed normal. Like friends in high school would watch pornography. I would hear about people having sex, and
Mhm.
I felt that, oh, there's something wrong with me. But as I got into my 20s, I started to realize that my behavior was a little bit strange. I wasn't a
Mm.
strange kid. I was just 20, 21, and I was the kind of guy who was like, women would say I was creepy. And that was weird
Mm.
to me because I didn't identify as that. I was
Mhm.
like, I was raised by good parents. And I was like, wow, like why am I creepy? And friends like, dude, you're always like just staring at women, watching them. So I didn't know I was constantly objectifying. And
Mhm.
then I was very awkward. I didn't know how to connect with women. So when
Mhm.
I would try to date a woman, I would always say something that was off. Eventually, I started realizing that I only viewed women that were not family as sexual objects. I realized
Mm.
that I was like, I don't know how to be friends with them. Every conversation, every laughter, every shared connection would immediately be a sign to me that, oh, she likes me. I need to have sex with her. And I had the self awareness to know that that was not normal. That
Uh-huh.
that wasn't normal. I also had a very deep desire, and again, all of this is in retrospect. Just for everyone listening, at 20 years old, I didn't know what the heck was going on. Right?
Right.
I have
None
the
of us
words.
do.
Yeah, I have the words for it now.
Right.
Back then, I didn't. But I was like, why is it I want to have sex with all these women? Why is it I'm watching so much pornography when I feel bad? But why
Mhm.
do I also want to be in a relationship?
Mhm.
Why do
Mhm.
I also have this need? And I figured, well, I think I want to connect with people. I want to connect. But pornography was not providing that. So the thing that actually got me to realizing I had a problem was when I started acting out. I got
Mm.
very frustrated with knowing I wanted to be in a relationship, but at the same time, not knowing how to do it. I started getting on personals, online personals, looking
Mhm.
for anonymous sexual encounters, and trying to meet people. Thankfully, I never did. But the process of doing that was very, very shame filled, like
Right.
texting with people, messaging people, trying to set up rendezvous. And there was an incident where um, it was about 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. one day. I'd come back from a bar, absolutely drunk, and I
Mhm.
got on the porn sites. I would watch pornography. I would get on chat sites, pay the women to have conversations with them. It was very validating because they'd be like, "Oh, so why don't you have a boyfriend? Why don't you have a girlfriend?" And
Right.
what's and I would love the validation. Then I'd get frustrated because I couldn't have sex with them. And this day, a woman messaged me from one of the personals and said, "Hey, I'm in your city and I'd love to meet up with you. And I'm babysitting, and here's the location." So, like an idiot, I got in my car and I went straight to that location at about 2:33 a.m.
Mm.
Obviously, it wasn't a woman, it was a group
Mm.
of people and a group of men. I don't know what they would have done to me. The only
Mhm.
thing that saved me was that my little Nissan Xterra I had it on drive.
Mhm.
So the person kept texting me and was like, just turn the car off and come out. I'll come out and meet you. And I was freaking out because I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? This is
Right.
so crazy. And I had that same feeling I had when I was a child. I had the adrenaline rush that this is bad, this is naughty, this is exciting and arousing at the same time.
Right.
Someone's shattered the side a glass of my car. And
Oh.
yeah, someone shattered it like a bat or something. And
Oh.
I just remember putting my foot on the accelerator, driving through the backyard. I remember going through like a tent and a trampoline, pool.
Oh, no.
I'm serious, a kiddie pool out through the front and on the highway. And I drove out from the suburb. And
Sure.
Tanya, I remember just my hands gripping the steering wheel, and I kept saying to myself, "JK, you were not raised like this. You were not raised like this. You were not raised
Mm.
like this. You were not raised
Mhm.
like this."
Mhm.
I got back home, and that was the day that I decided that I was done. I could have died. I could have gone to jail. I could have hurt somebody. I was
Mhm.
drinking. I was driving. I was trying to meet who. I don't know. There was
Mhm.
so many ways that could have gone sideways, and it
Mhm.
didn't. And so that was my wake up call.
Wow. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share that. That's a really vulnerable story. When you look back at that, can you plotline what your mental thinking was to get you there? Where did the desperation come from?
Absolutely. It was two things. First of all, looking back, I was lacking in intimacy. And the thing with constant pornography use is that there's nothing intimate about pornography. There's no connection there. It's just
Mhm.
sex. And I had a deep need for that. But the more I watched pornography, the more subconsciously I came to believe that this was the way that you connected with the opposite sex. It was all about that. That was the first thing. The
Mhm.
second thing is when you're addicted to pornography, your nervous system changes every time you're aroused. Unlike a substance abuse disorder, pornography addiction is a behavioral or a process addiction, which means
Mhm.
that, for instance, with alcohol, the substance is external to you. But with pornography, people think it's the orgasm. It isn't. Your unconscious mind already understands that for a man, at least, those of you who have partners, the orgasm is quite short lived.
Mhm.
So, knowing that, it gets addicted to every process that leads up to it, including the release of dopamine, which is, as you know, a precursor of something good to come.
Right.
And so that's why men edge and spend hours on pornography with different tabs open because they are simply prolonging the orgasm and they're chasing every other hormone and neurochemical involved in the process: testosterone, adrenaline, norepinephrine, dopamine, and all the everything that leads up to the release of endogenous opioids. And in that situation, I was just chasing. It's this scene is not good enough. I got to go to the next scene. This is how people you open the newspaper or you look at the news and you're just like, how is it that the local police chief, the coach, to this person, to that person got caught with child pornography? A lot of times they are not pedophiles. A lot
Mm.
of times they are regular people who have children who went down that route of viewing pornography, but because they were chasing and they were pushing their orgasm forward, they needed more and more taboo material, including trying to act out in order
Mhm.
to do that. The reason
Mhm.
I had never met anybody all those years in retrospect was because the process of having the conversation was the thing that was changing my state. I
Mm.
enjoyed being in the state of chatting, of edging, of masturbating, but not seeking orgasm. And that's when you're in that state, it's almost as if you have a different personality. In the Christian sense of the word, people would say it's almost as if you were possessed by a demon and you didn't come to until you orgasmed. What happened is, with most mental states like that, your nervous system and your brain chemistry, if they were to run a scan on you at that point, is completely different from the way it would be after an orgasm. And that's the state I was in.
And I really appreciate you separating this out, that this is a behavioral process that's happening inside the body. Have I got that correct?
Correct.
Happening inside the body because of outside influences, but it is not like a drug or an alcohol. It's probably much more like workaholism of I'm being fed by this, and we're back to dopamine nation. Basically, I'm getting hit with these dopamines and it feels good when I get a promotion, when I make more money, when I make a sale, when I make all these things. And separate out, define more. This is where I think women get hooked up, is why am I not enough? Because it's not about her, because it's not about intimacy with another person. Can you talk more about what intimacy is versus this dopamine hit that you get from pictures, from chatting, from moving? It's almost just, I'm thinking out loud, almost just an anticipatory process, that's what
Absolutely.
really is exciting. So
Absolutely.
what's
Well,
the intimacy difference?
before I walk down this path, I want to put out a disclaimer. There's a reason why we specialize in working with men. We work with husbands. It's interestingly enough, it's the partners who reach out to us
Yes.
most of the time. But the disclaimer I want to put out here is that if you are a woman who is going through some form of betrayal trauma, sometimes some of the things I will say moving forward might seem a little bit triggering. And they might seem a little bit triggering because you are in the pain. And you may disagree with me. And I want you to know that that's absolutely fine. It's
Mhm.
okay to do this. Understand that what I'm sharing is coming from not just my experience as a male former porn addict, but also as a man who actively works with men who really want to end their behavior. They love their partners. Your partner actually cares for you in most cases. They care for you, they love you. If they didn't, they would have left. They wouldn't be there
Mm.
apologizing. They wouldn't be
Mhm.
there trying to go to couples counseling. They wouldn't be there doing all those things. Now, I know that that doesn't sound uh, um, to men. Men are the partners like, but I'm still here for her, JK. Like, I mean, what else? Like, I went to the counseling. I'm here. I'm here. And I explained to him that, listen, you've triggered years of past trauma, the lies she may have been told by other partners, by mom, by dad, by other things.
Mm.
That's why it feels so heavy. That's why you're so
Mhm.
shocked at her reaction. But it's not your job to understand her trauma. It is your job to acknowledge it. It is always your job to validate her emotions. And it is always your job to reassure her that you are doing the work. And as long as you do these three things over and over and over again, that is your best chance at saving your relationship. So, go ahead.
Let me add into that. And for the women listening, you have work to do too.
Absolutely.
Um, when he is doing his work, nagging him, asking him to show you what's going on, what this is about, all of those things are actually pushing him away. If you will do your work, if you will get to the root of the trauma that you feel around it, and I can hear some of my population screaming, well, he did this, he did this. Yes, but it triggered something in you, and that's what you need to deal with. And that JK is what my work is all about, is helping the family to see that the person who is doing addictive behavior didn't come from out of nowhere, and that you, as their partner, mother, you know whoever you are in the relationship, you have a part in this. You didn't create this scenario, but you have a part in this. And how you are getting sucked in is something you really need to look at, and to see what it is that you need to validate in yourself, that you need to heal in yourself, that you need to look at in yourself. Because if your man, let's put who you really deal with, is saying, I'm working on this, I'm dealing with this, and they are actually doing the work, you pushing will cause enormous damage and possible separation because he's doing the work
I
to
am
deal with what
so
he needs.
glad. I'm so happy to hear someone else co-signing that, Tanya. You know, one of the most just I often find myself having this, I call it an argument with my clients. And it is men that the question is, should my wife for my pornography addiction be my accountability partner?
No.
And I always say, absolutely
Mm-mm.
not. And they're like, well, she said that by being her accountability partner, she would feel so much closer to me. She would feel that she could trust me. She could feel all those things. And I tell them, it may feel good for a while, but understand this: when you reach out to her and you tell her, "Hey, I have this problem," and you tell her that all these things and ask her to be your accountability partner, or she offers, understand that she may not truly understand what she's getting into. Why? Because this behavior existed before she got with you. That's the
Mhm.
first thing. The
Mhm.
second thing is, you also have to understand that what she may enjoy is the vulnerability. You've been
Mhm.
so closed off for so long. The idea of you coming to her and telling her about the problem, and you guys are back in this together. There's that oxytocin. We are going to do this for our
Mhm.
relationship. Then you message JK's team and you're like, I don't need the program anymore because my wife has got my back. And we say, see you in 30 days when your relationship is falling
No.
apart.
No.
And
Because you know as well as I do, somewhere it's going to hit up against her shame grid. She's going to feel like I'm not doing enough, I'm not enough, I'm not woman enough. And unfortunately, the Christian tradition has some misreadings in there about that. And we can talk about that at another time, audience, but they have some misreadings in there about that. It's going to hit your shame grid. You're going to feel bad about yourself. Where are you going to turn that? Right back on him. He's trying to be intimate with he is super vulnerable with his feelings. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's trying to get out of his 3 crayon box and have 8 crayons in his box as far as his feelings are concerned. And now your shame grid has been mashed, and you're going to unfortunately emasculate him at that point because you're angry.
so true. Now you may not know you're emasculating him, but also understand that um this is not what you signed up for.
Mm,
You may not realize it, but you know, in your mind it might be for better or worse, in sickness and in health. But you didn't sign up to take care of a boy. And here's what I mean. I'm not saying your
amen.
husband is a boy. I'm just saying that quite naturally, how do you consider a man who you got together for certain attractive qualities, his independence, his ambition, the little quirks that made you go like, that guy's going to be a good father. And
Mhm,
suddenly there's this new part of him where you get the covenant eyes or the filter notification that, like a teenage boy struggling with a porn addiction, he's yet again gone to that site. You
mhm,
may not realize it consciously, but you start losing respect for him. A lot of that is happening unconsciously. And then the partners show up and the men tell me, well, you know what, we're still close to each other. We still live together, but she just said, I just don't feel attracted to him anymore. The attraction will die. Everything could be there. The friendship, the camaraderie. Y'all might still joke and laugh and watch Netflix together and go on dates. But when you're wondering, why is it that I don't feel aroused by my husband anymore? It is because of this. Those are not the attractive qualities that you wanted. You don't want to babysit him. I
mm,
know you think you do, but you also know, as you listen to this, that there's something in you that wants validation.
mhm,
You want to see and to find out that he said it's not because of me. He said he loves me. I need proof that he loves me. And if he's watching, then he lied. And understand, you are feeding that thing within you, which is why I love what Tanya said about doing your own work. When a male client comes to me and he's doing the work and he reaches out and he says, but yes, I'm making such great progress. I've been honest with her, But you know what, JK, it's been 4 months, and I understand she's going through betrayal trauma, but she's still going through my phone randomly. She's
Mhm.
still going through these bouts. And you said that it happens and it's okay. And the question I ask is, well, is she seeking help? And if
Mm.
the answer is, well, she told me you're the one with the problem. You're the one that seeking help. I tell him, brother, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if she does not start doing the work on herself, it is unlikely a relationship, statistically speaking, will make it. Y'all might still be together, but it will never be the same. It will not be a happy relationship.
And when that man comes to you and says, "JK, I'm doing everything I need to do," she's still going through my phone. She's still calling me out on it. Yesterday, she she just cleaned my clock verbally that I was not the man that I'm supposed to be, and blah blah blah. And you say to him, she really needs to do her own work. Does he just crumple? Do you give him tips to empower her? In my own thought process and the women that I work with, it's exactly what you were talking about. Do you want a man that you have to police? Do you want a man you have to mother? Do you want a man you have to raise? Or are you willing to give them the dignity and the respect to do their own work and get out of the way long enough for them to do it? So, what do you say to that man who's like, she's still after me? It's been 4 or 5 months. She's still on me.
It comes back to AVR: acknowledge, validate, and reassure.
Mhm.
And she comes up with she's triggered, and you guys were just having a good time, and she suddenly asks you some question about how your recovery or reboot is going, and you respond, but you're not accurate about something. And she's like, but you actually told me that you
Mm.
only had sex with 5 women before you met me, and now suddenly there's 7. Who are the other 2? And you're just like, I don't and now you're just like, you know, and you're freaking out. Acknowledge, acknowledge how she feels. And I tell the men, don't apologize. Now, this is the part where those of you who are listening who are just like, what do you mean? Here's
Mhm.
why. Your husband has likely apologized a whole lot.
Mm.
Every time he apologizes from this point on, while it may sound good at first, you're going to start getting mad. And that's
Mm.
because it's always a reminder that he has wronged you.
Mm.
So I tell him, have you apologized? He's like, I've apologized so much. I was like, enough. Now you will show respect for her process by
Mhm.
acknowledging that, you know what? I can see how you feel this way. I did do a lot of things that I did keep a lot of things from you. And I should have shared those things with you. You're right. You're absolutely right. I see how you would feel that way. And then you validate. And then she emotes and she shares. It doesn't matter the feeling. You don't go like, oh well, that's not fair to feel that way. I'm also going through my work. You
Mhm. Mhm.
acknowledge that she feels hurt and she feels betrayed and she feels sad. And even if she says she doesn't see a future, you also validate that. Validating that does not mean the relationship will end. That's how she feels. And you must, we call it working with your brain instead of against it. Do not fight it. Validate.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
after this, you must reassure and tell her. And you know what I'm going to do? When I go speak to my therapist, when I go to my accountability brothers, when I speak to my coach, I'm actually going to bring up that thing you talked about, because it might be that my memory is a little hazy and you it comes across as lying. But when I was doing those things as an addict, a lot of times I was high or I was drinking or something. So when I'm giving you the details, it might be jumbled. But I know it's
Mhm.
important to you. So let me talk to my coach and find out what's happening there. And I will tell you next time that we talk about it. The reason I mention this is the more a man speaks this way, the better in general his partner feels, and the more open she is to the
Mhm.
idea of seeking help. because he's now communicating in a way that doesn't trigger her, number one.
Mm.
And number two, at the end of it, she feels good. So for the first time ever, she starts thinking, I think this coaching thing is working because I feel good, not because he's communicating differently. She's like, I actually feel good after these conversations. Maybe I should speak to a therapist. That's
Well,
how to make it happen.
and do you think part of it is, okay, I feel heard. He's acknowledged me. He's validated me. I didn't have to pull that out of him. He's got a team that's working with him. I'm not responsible for all of this anymore. I don't have to control it anymore. It is no longer in my lap, and this secret isn't just our little secret anymore. He's actually getting proper help. That's where I'd like to go next. So, talk to us. This is so fascinating, JK. Talk to us about, because I know women are listening. How do people get involved with you? What does it really look like? You said normally it's the partners that talk to you, because I want to invite you back to really talk about intimacy. And I
Hmm,
think that's a whole 30-minute conversation in
sure,
itself.
sure,
But what does your program really look like? And especially, I work with a lot of women where, their men are saying, this is just what men do. This is not a big deal.
yeah. Yep. Let's address that first. Um, it is what men do, but it is a big deal. If it's a big deal for you, it's a big deal. The truth is that biologically speaking, men have the capacity to just have sex with multiple women if they choose to, with no consequence to them. And for women, again, in general, some women can do that, but most women are not built for that. Most women at a certain point in life have certain desires and they want stability and security. And a
Mhm.
man who engages in that is not providing you with the emotional safety that you need. And when he says that all men do that and you don't feel safe, then it's important for you to let him know that. Even if you're just like, sure, like all men do that, but I prefer to feel safe. Express that to him and
Mhm.
understand that he's living in what we call it the civilian world.
Mm.
He's living in a world where he has justified it to himself. He doesn't feel it's a big deal. He's like, why are you even bringing it up? It's not a
Mhm.
big deal. And frankly speaking, if it's something that's causing you a lot of pain, there is no shame in putting your foot down and drawing the line and setting the boundary, even if you have to leave.
Mhm.
There is nothing wrong with that. Often, for some of these men, that is the only way that um, they will become aware of this. And this is my 11th year of coaching men, literally every day through this
Right.
problem. And in 11 years, I have met men who were 31 years old when they reached out and they were like, hey, I got a 2 year old and I got a new baby on the way. My wife just found out I have this problem with porn. And honestly, I'm only here because she told me she was gonna leave me,
Mhm.
right? And I start working with them and I tell them it's good because most men they seek help out of fear, out of love, or out of duty. One of those three. And I tell them you've got to find more reasons to be here because if you're only here for her and you're not here for yourself and to learn how to be intimate and connect again, it's going to be a problem. Sure enough, a lot of those men just slink away as soon as they can convince their partners that they're okay. And for you, the partner listening, do not be so eager for things to return back to normal that
Mm.
the moment he gets some control, you just go like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move on with like we're gonna buy that new house, right? Let's go start looking at houses.
Or have another baby,
Or
right? Have another baby.
another baby. Do not. You must give this time. 10 years later, I get the emails. I actually have a folder in my Gmail that my assistants just collect those in. 10 years later, hey man, you probably remember or don't remember me, but 10 years ago or 9 or 7 years ago, I reached out about this. And now she's taking the kids and taking half my stuff, and I'm in a better financial situation now, so I think I can afford it. And it's heartbreaking
Mm.
because I know what his relationship was like for that decade,
Mhm.
right? So what we do, Tanya, and for your listeners, is that we work with men to help them not only control their behavior, but rewire their brains to monogamy. I call it
Mhm.
rewiring to monogamy.
Mhm.
Monogamy is a choice people make, and for the first time, with the family unit falling apart, marriage being taken for granted, and the high divorce rates, marriage has become this thing where people think that the institution and the commitment will keep them together. And I
Mm.
educate men to understand that it is work. And in today's world and culture, it is a choice that you make. And pornography is one of those things that robs you of the desire to do the hard but worthwhile work of maintaining a monogamous relationship. So ultimately, we're showing men how to change the basic habits. The habit realm is where a lot of coaches live. They'll teach you how to replace a habit, and the man ends up relapsing later on down the line. We
Mhm.
teach you how to change your habits, but it's not enough. Those habits have to become a part of your lifestyle. This is where the Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-step groups stop, because they're
Mm.
very good at establishing habits and creating lifestyle. But the lifestyle is limiting. And that's why men get stuck in a place of feeling not free. Well, once an addict, always an addict. They're just taking it day by day. I am always recovering. You're
Right.
stuck in lifestyle. I didn't want to be stuck in lifestyle. The final change is self image. The way you view yourself must change. At one time in your life, you did not look at yourself as an addict. You did not look at yourself that was a forever slave to this behavior.
Right.
And we have to change your self image into the image of a man who does not need pornography, who always has a choice. Understand that when a man experiences craving for sex, craving simply means that there is no other viable option other than pornography and masturbation. We show men that there is another option. And the minute another variable is introduced to the equation, he now has a choice. As he
Mm.
repeats that through the program, his brain rewires. And that's why we actually call porn reboot, not porn recovery.
Right.
Recovery is recovering that which you lost. But those brothers who reach out to me when they're 41 years old, when their behavior started or was at its peak in their early 30s, you can't go back to 30. You're a different man at 40. What are you recovering? You lost it, right?
Right.
So what we
Right.
do is we hit the reset button. It is absolutely fine to break it down and rebuild all your values and your principles into a brand new man. Imagine getting back with a man who is better than the man you fell in love with. That's
Mm.
one of our goals for the men who come through our program.
Wow. Wow. I know there are so many of my clients, so many of my audience who want to hear this, that you are able to, and it takes some time, it
Oh
sounds
yeah,
like you're
absolutely.
able to help them separate. What I heard in the beginning was what they thought was intimacy, and especially what our media world pushes on them is sexuality, and this is what sex looks like. I'm raising 2 teenage boys at the present moment. This is what sex looks like. It is up to us, those who are aware, those who choose a different lifestyle, to say, "No, that's not intimacy." And the next phase is to look at, like you said, it is not just recovery, right? You're not recovering something that was lost. You're actually rebooting, rebuilding, creating a new person, a person who is not trapped in, as you said in your early stages when you were 8, of rejection, anger, sadness. Then we do this. This doesn't even have to be pornography. But when you get trapped in there long enough, you don't feel like you have any more choices. In fact, I have a client right now whose husband says, "I don't know why I'm like this. I don't know why this is happening." That, I would think, JK, is your perfect client. The person who says,
Absolutely.
I want my family. I don't know why this is happening. Help me sort through these pieces.
Those are problems we eat for breakfast.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I so appreciate your time. We do need to come back and have an intimacy conversation all on its own. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your program, and we'll of course put links below for all of that.
Thank you so much. First off, my name is JK. Got a long name, so the initials are JK, and the last name is spelled Emezi. My recommendation is Google me, and find out about me. Who is this guy? What does he do? What does the Google and the internet say about him? And then our company is elevatedrecovery.org. And I want to make it clear that while I am the head coach, we have a wonderful suite of professionals who are trained in our system. Dr. Eastman, Dr. Rankin, Coach Milan. We have a bunch of reboot heroes. We have a lot of professionals in addition to myself who are here to support you. Our flagship program is called the Porn Reboot Program. You can find me on the Porn Reboot podcast on Apple, Spotify, everywhere that there are podcasts. On YouTube, you can search for JK Emezi. And if you're into TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff, I'm not, but my team has me on there. And my recommendation for you or for your partner is to we have I probably have like maybe 1,400 videos out there and 600 podcast episodes. My recommendation is to first educate yourself. Get comfortable with this. We have so many people who send us messages saying, like, you know what, just from your free material alone, like I and my husband were able to get to the point where we're ready to actually go speak to a counselor. We were so closed off to the idea, but you really opened us up to it and we feel so much more comfortable. So check out my material, take your time with it, share it with your husband.
Mhm.
Just share it to him, let him listen, and give him some time to consume the material.
Yes. And for my 2 cents, don't push, shove, and scream about this. If this is something that needs to be done, as JK said earlier, it's time to set a boundary and it's time to take action rather than be idle and make the idle threats, all those types of things. So there really is hope out there. JK is living proof of the hope. He's worked with, you told me, an enormous number. How many people have you worked with so far?
Altogether, they've come through our courses and our programs since 2012, little over 15,000 men. Right now, we have between 400 to 800 active clients and students going through our courses. So that's not, I'm saying it, but I'm proud that we're able to support those people. I'm not proud of the fact that there are this many people who need help. That's pretty sad,
It
right? But
is. On
it
the other hand, you're
yeah.
not alone. This is not a closet thing anymore. We're becoming more and more aware of the detriment to it in the relationship. And one of the things that I talk about is generationally. You know, if you are raising kids, kids know more than you think. Just like JK found that pornographic comic book, your children know a lot more than you think.
Yeah,
So,
one thing I just want to drop, Tanya, for the
yeah.
parents. My mother did not know that I had an addiction to pornography until I released my first YouTube video
Oh
at
no.
31, 32 years old.
Oh no.
That's how good I was at
Yes.
hiding it.
Yes.
So do not underestimate your children. And maybe next time when we speak about intimacy, Tanya, we can have a conversation on, and I'm sure you know how to do this too, on how do you talk to your kids
Mm,
about pornography? How do you broach the topic and so on?
absolutely. And there's some really good books out there for that as well.
Good pictures, bad pictures. Let's go with that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, JK, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will schedule another time to talk some more.
Thank you for having me.